Went to the break. Don from California held on from line one. And Don, did you have a follow-up for Clif?
Yes, I sure did. And Clif had talked about before about the squeeze, that the magnetic squeeze as we pass the center point. And I know that ever since 2001, I've had this ringing in my ears. And I wanted to know if that had anything related to us going through this the squeeze on the magnetosphere, I believe it is.
Yeah, it may indeed. Humans are very sensitive, and some 6% of the populace can actually sense electromagnetism. Some 3% of the populace is highly sensitive to magnetics, and probably you're in that group if you've had that continuous tinnitus, that high-pitched tone. And actually what it is the magnetic influence of the background radiation, in our opinion, here at Half Past Human, is so overwhelming that it's crushing the magnetosphere, but it's also affecting all of us. I can offer some yoga tips for maybe correcting it a bit, but something that does seem to help is to stay hydrated. And I don't mean coffee or power drinks or any of that. I'm talking just straight water, as pure as you can get.
It's fascinating that you mentioned that, because when I am hydrated, that seems to be when it tends to lessen or go away.
And that's part of the issue is that the small little hairs that hold these little tiny nodules that actually form your point of balance are actually what are picking it up, and you can actually influence their effect by maintaining a certain level of water in your system. It's the best we can do, though. I suffer from it myself.
Okay, Don, one more question because we got a full board of cars.
Yeah, is there any point in time when the mainstream media will start to mention anything about this galactic squeeze that we're going to go through?
I don't know about that because there's nothing showing up in the immediacy or the short-term data. The mainstream media is going to be really impacted by events in 2010, but at least not through the data that we've looked at that goes out to about July of 2010. They're not really focusing on that because there's just basically too much other crud going on.
Exactly. Don, I want to thank you for the call, and please call again. I've had the same ringing that he's describing as well, too, and I appreciate the tip. I will try to hydrate more. Let's go to line 2. Sherry from Tennessee is calling in. Hi, Sherry. Do you have a question or a comment for Clif?
Hey, guys. Number one, just real quickly on the whole media. The media is never going to listen to us. Just accept that and understand that, point blank. But I was very fascinated with the concept of the vitamin D. How do I provide that for my children outside of milk and being outside in the sun?
No. You have to. I'm sorry, I have to intrude right there. You've got to understand that the milk and all of the stuff that's controlled on the supplements issue is done through RDA amounts, which were recommended daily allotment, that was determined by a study in the 1940s. And it's crept into the 50s of 47,000 U.S. soldiers. And so anything that's in the RDA was from a military viewpoint of the minimum daily required to keep these guys not in fighting shape, but just barely able to make their duties. So they would say the RDA says 400 units, and even a small child can take more than that. You have to be very careful about vitamin D over a long haul, but as an adult, I can easily take 2,000 units a day during the summer when I'm out walking around, and I intend to go up to 5,000 international units when the weather closes in on us here, which will probably be in a matter of days here in the Northwest, because we go into basically a tunnel, just huge amounts of clouds, and I won't be able to get enough sun to do any good. Plus, we have to acknowledge a couple of things. The nature of the sun has changed over these past couple of years. The amount of vitamin D being created is directly related to the amount of UVB rays that are getting through, and there aren't that much getting through anymore, what with the chemtrails, pollution, the changes in the atmosphere, the changes in the sun, et cetera. Vitamin D has to be considered something that you really need to work at to get. If you're going to try and do it on sunlight alone, you'd have to do almost full-body exposure now for about 2 hours. And yet the actinic rays that are coming off the sun, the UVA and the UVC, will burn you in that period of time and still prevent the vitamin D. Plus, vitamin D depends on cholesterol in the skin or in the subcutaneous areas. And so our cholesterol has been altered by our diet. And so really you need to look at vitamin D. Now, you need to talk to a nutritionist. You can find a lot of them online, especially when you're dealing with children, because I won't make a blanket statement about the vitamin levels for children because they need to be addressed almost on an individual basis. Some children one might fall into one of the three body types as defined by Ayurveda, the Kapha, Vata, or the Pitta. And say you had a wraith-like child, a very thin child. That child may need more vitamin D, but not have the fat cells available to suck it up and store it. So
do you think this would really, Cliff, I'm sorry, but do you really think this would help with the swine flu as well?
Oh, yes, because see, here's the issue. There's a direct correlation between deaths from pneumonia, which really is what is the cause on most flu deaths,
yes,
and the onset of the flu in the northern hemisphere with the lack of light in January and February and March. We really get into our tunnel here across the whole northern hemisphere from November onward, and of course that's the flu season. Well, why is that the flu season? Because theoretically people are not out wandering around getting vitamin D in their system anymore, and their immune systems get weak, and of course as you get closer into the middle of winter, that's when the flu system really kicks in. More people are sick in January, February than are in November, but more people are sick in November from flu-like symptoms than are in June or July.
Absolutely makes perfect sense to me. Sherry, thanks for the call, and please call again. Let's go to line 3. Michael from Colorado. Hi, you're on with Cliff. Do you have a question for Cliff? Hello, Michael.
Hello?
Hi, Michael.
Yes.
You're on with
Yes,
Cliff.
sir.
Do you have a question? Welcome to the show.
Thanks to the host for this excellent show. If you could ask Mr. High, he talks about a crustal ship, 30 degrees. I was just curious what that would look like land-wise, where the North Pole would be, where the South Pole would be in relation to where they are now.
Okay, the reason that number comes up, the 30%, is it has to do with Hapgood and a few of these other people that have studied previous pole shifts at a crustal level in the past, and it appears that the crust shifts about 30% relative to the obliqueness of the planet. We're slightly an oblate elliptoid rather than a real sphere. So if we were going to have a crustal shift and just say that it shifted with the direction of the spin, which would be sort of to the west, we would end up with the South Pole perhaps at the bulge of Brazil and the North Pole at Midway Island. Make sense?
Yes. I read Von Daniken's book when I was in junior high, and he said something similar to that, too.
And that appears to be the most likely in terms of everybody's thinking at the physics level, because once you get a certain amount of mass melted away from the ice caps, the oceans change, and all this relative to where the mass is on the planet in our rotation and the angular momentum seems to want to throw us that way. There's also been some suggestion from Hapgood and Hancock and a few others that at some point in the fairly recent past, the area we now call the Antarctic continent was in fact really much more up towards a temperate zone, and perhaps even at the level of where Africa is. And so it would maybe even have qualified for Atlantis were it there and not covered with ice, just because it replicates the description that came out of Plato. If that were the case, then that would have been a 30-degree shift from about the bulge in Brazil area down to where Antarctica is now. Now, there's no guarantee, though, that any given continent would stay the same in shape or elevation in that process.
I think this has happened several times before in our past.
At least 9 that I've been able to track down references to, yeah.
Well, the Hopis call this, the fifth world?
Correct,
and you get a lot of corresponding data from a lot of other mythology, and I use that term in quotes because it might be more real than we realize. Michael, thanks for the call. Let's go to Beth, calling from Oregon on line 4. Hi, Beth. What's on your mind?
Hello?
Hi, Beth. You're on with Cliff.
Hi. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
I've got 2 questions. The first one is, what happened to the Summer of Hell?
The first one can be answered fairly easily depending on where you live. I was curious. The other day I got 3 emails in a row, boom, boom, boom. One said, boy, what a summer of hell. The next one said, geez, summer of hell for sure. And the third one says, where is the summer of hell? Well, the first 2 people that wrote, one guy was in an area of the, I think, Ohio River Valley area or Iowa in that area, and he was saying that they've had, out of the summer, they'd had 2 months of rain. They'd had hail in the summer repeatedly. None of the crops had grown. Everything that did grow was rotting in the ground from all the water. And now it looked like they were going to go into fall, and the trees were turning. And in his opinion, that really made for the summer of hell. I had another fellow that was saying that he was down in in the Southwest somewhere. Oh, actually, it was in Austin, and he said in Austin area, or San Antonio, sorry, they usually get 9 days over 100 degrees, and it had been 57 already this year. So we here in the Pacific Northwest, outside of those few record-breaking heat days, have really lucked out. We have not seen much of the extreme weather conditions and heat conditions that have been affecting everybody else. So it's not ubiquitous. But on the other hand, I hate to put it this way because it sounds really doomy, and I don't want to use those kind of words, but I have to point out summer is not over until the 21st of September, and in fact, we're going to get the economic component of that ramping up from this point forward through to October 25th. And so a lot more people are going to be a lot more impacted by the summer of hell in the latter few days of it than have been in the first couple of months. And
well, I guess my question, Cliff, here is the summer of hell. Are you speaking on different levels, both weather and economic?
Oh, certainly, because think about it. Yes, it was just an emotional level. A lot of people considered that this summer was extremely bad for them because their unemployment ran out and there's no hope for a job. And the level of foreclosures went up, all different kinds of things affecting people all over. It was not strictly a weather issue. Many people were indeed affected by weather in a negative way, and will be yet. We still have some forecast for major storm movements along the eastern.
Yeah, we're going to have to hold it right there, Cliff. But we're going to hit the economic part of this when we come back from the break. Caller, stay on the line. We'll be with you after these messages. And you're listening to The Common Sense Show, coming to you proudly on RBN. And Andy DeRiso is with me tonight. We're joined by our special guest, Cliff, and we've got a full board of calls, but I'm going to ask you to indulge me until after the bottom of the hour, because, Cliff, if we don't get to this, we never would. You've got some very disturbing language in the WebBot about coming economic events, and they're just right around the corner. So you want to start with what's going on, what's going to happen September 14th, culminating on the 25th of October?
Sure. The issue on the 13th and 14th and 15th will be a sudden rise in a hurricane that slams up against probably the East Coast. I don't think it'll go into the Gulf, but it just appears to, in our immediacy data, and it's going to cause a lot of people to have to flee and do the whole relocation bit. But the economic stuff really started on week of August 22nd, as we'd forecast. We said that sometime back that there would be information coming out about derivatives that would not be good and would start raising a certain level of awareness within the banking community and those that pay attention to it. And indeed, that did show up on that Friday of that week. Above the fold on the Wall Street Journal was an article about how basically the next round of the banking crisis is about to begin. Now, the economic stuff has to be understood as being part and parcel of everything else that's going to affect us all through 2010. But this current economic language that we're in now is going to shade more and more to what we call release language, which is people releasing fear and expressing fear and trepidation, or any emotion for that matter, as opposed to building tension language where